Well, this is where I learned that dyslexics, what I found out later is when dyslexics go to grad school, we own the place day one or soon thereafter, virtually every time. So I go in and he calls on me. I answer. He asks me another question. I answer immediately. Everything slows down and organizes for the first time in my life. Well, now there's a problem. He's not wiping me out. Remember, it's the second day of class, so he starts getting a little snarky. I get a little snarky back. Within a minute, I'm leaning forward yelling at him because he said later he was trying to push my buttons. And then he's leaning forward yelling at me.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, it is my honor to welcome our guests and to stop here for a minute just to thank them for coming, because I know they're coming with a couple of things very expensive in my eyes. Their time, 24 hours, has been offered to every single one of us. And Russell's here to spend some of that. I want to thank him for that because that is precious stuff. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created him. It gave him some information, data, if you will. And we label those things wisdom, knowledge, insights, and we want access. And in order for Russell to allow us access, he has to become vulnerable. And we want to thank him for giving us that opportunity. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, man. Let me ask you this question, Russell. I always ask everyone this question that come to the podcast, because as I mentioned to you, I believe the journey, quote unquote, has a couple of hallmarks in it. The first is the introduction to self, and the other part, as I said, that graduation party that we have that gives us the ability to become servants. My question to you is simply this: how do you serve mankind?
I'm sorry, what was that? You kind of went out for a second.
How do you serve mankind? What is it that you do today, if you will?
Well, what I do is I show parents how to teach their dyslexic kids and train teachers how to work effectively with dyslexics so they don't have to go through the hell that I went through. Go through the hell that I went through in school. To me, academics until I hit graduate school was nothing short of pure unadulterated torture and hell. It was ineffective. It was horrendous. And I show parents and teachers how they can quickly bring their dyslexic students' reading, writing skills to grade level or way past it in a very kind, effective, scientific backed way. So the kids can be kids and not be held hostage to the torture of trying to get along in our educational system that is designed to make them fail.
Yeah, the educational system of our days, as they say, is lacking in so many different ways. Some of it is not conducive to folks' special needs and so forth. And it is honorable to have someone like yourself that is affording the parents, because I was a dad with 4 kids, 5 boys I understand the need of a parent to find the best thing for their child. Russ, one of our customers, to go back in our beginnings, I call it the beginnings. Every one of us have a beginning, if you will. And that's our location is the family, the first place we hang out for about 16, 18 years. But usually there is where we get our foundations, or going to begin to start forming there. Foundation in my mind meaning simply our thought patterns, our behavior, how we communicate with others, the perceptions we form right there because of some traumas that we were going to encounter because of mom and dad and family members and all those different things that are around, those different individuals around us. What was your family unit?
Well, when I grew up, my parents were incredibly supportive. They tried to give me enough room to grow, the help I needed. They really attempted it when I was having issues. Both my parents, they were married for 53 years until my father passed away. And I remember when we went on trips, I eventually became an Eagle Scout, but I remember that my parents, we would go away for 2 to 3 weeks at a time in the summertime, and we would stay at campsites with a lot of recreational facilities, and we lived out of a cooler. My parents cooked, so we could afford to do a lot of things. So it was very supportive. When it came to me and dyslexia, I found out I had to solve my own issues, and I started doing that around age 8. I picked up a box of crayons, those 64 color crayon boxes we used to get, and a dictionary. And I started to learn to try to read by turning words and definitions into different colored sequences. And it kind of worked when it worked, and it kind of didn't when it didn't. But when I was tested in college, because I was applying to graduate school, and I finally was tested properly for the first time by a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology, and I found out I had a first grade reading and writing level in college. I could occasionally get it to zoom up to try to kind of get past things, but generally it just crashed again. And I was functionally illiterate for most of the day. So that was a interesting time growing up.
Wow, that's a powerful story for an individual, all the way from such a young individual all the way to college to then find out that your reading level was based on that. Talk to me a little more about that, because we want to address this particular problem. There are a lot of kids out there and family members that are listening to our conversation that may have tuned into this podcast. You may know a family member or a friend or so forth that are dealing with this issue. Those young kids are going through much. Russell, talk a little about that confusion that is happening there within that time, and how did you manage? Because it is, and it can be a frustrating thing for an individual, because his world is different, that individual world is different from those that are around them. How did you manage, Russell?
Well, I just kept going. So what happens is one of two things. You either become incredibly motivated and just work through anything, or you become shattered as a person. So there's not that much in between. So for me, the interesting story really begins when I was applying for the New York State Assembly internship. I was finishing up college in the late 90s, and I wanted to know how law creations work. I didn't want some class, I wanted to know. So I applied to the Assembly internship. Well, that turned out to be quite interesting, because when I showed up and I gave them my neuropsychological evaluation, what they found is that this wasn't going to work. The standard internship could not work with my level of disability. As this went right up to the speaker's office, went directly, they formed a committee of their senior people, and they decided to say, they came to me and said, we're going to place you in the Capitol, not the legislative office building. We're separating you. And this was great for me, because they placed me in the Maturity Leaders Program and Counsel's office, which only dealt with graduate students. They hadn't had an undergrad in 30 years. They didn't know what to do with me. So they treated me like a graduate student. Why there? There were 3 administrative assistants who could take my garbage writing and turn it into something decent for the memos I had to give in each week. And they said, don't worry, we are used to this. A lot of people working here over the years have master's degrees, and we did the same for them. They looked at my writing and go, oh, wow, this is going to be, I said, you're not going to offend me. They said, this is going to be difficult. I said, welcome to dealing with a dyslexic. So then for the academic portion, I had to do a major research paper project. A very standard accommodation for me back then was to give an oral presentation. Very long one, hours of Q&A. This wasn't something quick. At the end, they recommended 15 credits of A-. Now, remember, this is the New York State Assembly. This is one of the 2 branches of our legislature that decided on these accommodations. So then it goes back to the State University of New York Center at Buffalo, Political Science Department, and they look after the report. No, they are not obligated to take the recommendation. Most do, or they might make a little changes here or there. But they looked at it and they said, we don't like these accommodations. Guess what my eventual grade was? 15 credits of F. Look, no, think about it. I was supposed to get A-, boost my GPA, and then I got 15 credits of F. Okay? And I was like, I am sick of this discrimination. So I'm going to solve reading and writing for everyone. So I go to my professors and I say, how do I go to grad school and force my way to learn to read and write? And they laughed and said, law school. Well, I went and I signed up to audit 2 law school classes. And they're like, we weren't actually expecting you to do this. A guy with a first grade reading and writing level going to law school. So I go in, and this is where I found, this changed my life. I thought I was going to go work for the legislature, become a senior bureaucrat, somewhere in the state government. Instead, I'm doing what I'm doing now. So I go into law school, and I specifically signed up to work with Professor Warner, who's a dyslexic law professor for decades. I go in, and what they do in law school is they try to crush you using the Socratic method. You don't know the answer, they keep asking you questions until you adapt. If anybody wants to know a movie, there's a famous movie in the 70s called The Paper Chase.
Uh-huh.
So I went in, and second day he calls on me. This is already after he crushed a few students. And my classmates are like looking at me with, sorry, it's you, buddy. Well, this is where I learned that dyslexics, what I found out later is when dyslexics go to grad school, we own the place day one or soon thereafter, virtually every time. So I go in and he calls on me. I answer. He asks me another question. I answer immediately. Everything slows down and organizes for the first time in my life. Well, now there's a problem. He's not wiping me out. Remember, it's the second day of class, so he starts getting a little snarky. I get a little snarky back. Within a minute, I'm leaning forward yelling at him because he said later he was trying to push my buttons. And then he's leaning forward yelling at me. He's like, this goes on for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. We're going back and forth as hard as we can. I know where he's going multiple steps ahead of time. Same for him with me. Finally, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he raises his hand. Russell, in the interest of time, I have to move on to the next case. You couldn't be any more correct. In that moment, I solved law school.
Yeah.
I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. At that point, I went back to the New York State Senate and I said, I want you to fund my research. I told them what it was. And when you're dealing with Republicans, very simple. Okay. What they want is they want a program. They want their school districts to come and say, we want this. And then they want better, faster, cheaper. You do that, you're golden with Republicans. When you're dealing with Democrats, they want to start at the high level with a bill. All right. So I'm dealing with the Republicans who controlled that body at the time. And I eventually, after years of working, they sent me to the New York State Education Department. I had to go. Yeah, that was a fun story. So I go there. They're like, okay, the majority leader of the state Senate is sending you over to us. How do we get rid of this guy? Well, we want a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology to evaluate this. Does this make any sense? I said, okay. They said, where's this out of? I said, Buffalo. Good. Get a SUNY distinguished professor to say, there's something here, and we'll continue. Otherwise, you're done. So I look up how many there are. 2. The biggest university center and the biggest college in the system, there's 2. Well, the woman who gave me the evaluation in my junior year was a distinguished professor. By happenstance, she said she would do it. So she came back and she said, yes, I have a base reading. Right. This is 20 hours of her beating me up. The smartest person I ever met. Ooh, that was fun. 20 minutes of her coming back at me. And she said, yes, I have a first grade reading and writing level. And then I can turn my system on a different part of my brain. And now I'm reading and writing at the graduate level, above average grad. And she wrote up a 5-page report. Well, this got a lot of attention. So then I go back and I go back and we just go through years of things and we finally get things tested out. And it ended up being that it was funded by the state for several years. And we took their best juniors and seniors. They're highly motivated, highly intelligent, with their best teacher, Susan Ford, at the Averill Park Central School District, right outside of Albany, New York. Why the best and brightest? Because I wanted to know what I could do with the ideal. They were juniors and seniors with middle school writing skills. Okay. 1 class period a day for the school year, they increased to the average range of entering graduate school students. They all went on to college. They all graduated. GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. No accommodations. Bus to New York State of under $900 per kid. And that's how I got started.
Wow. What a powerful story. But let me ask you this. Again, you went and you did all the studies and so forth. What were some, and I know everyone is different, if you will, but what were some of the common themes that you began to notice bringing all this data, putting all this stuff together? Because again, as you said, you're gonna see some patterns, if you will. What were some of those patterns that you began to discover? First of all, you saw them in your life because you had to go through all of that by yourself and learn, and you were able to discover some of them there. But what were some of the patterns as you expanded your field of study, if you will, by bringing in different folks? What were some of those that you noticed, and how did you address
Well,
them?
let's first start off with the science. This is the science in the field, the best one anywhere in the world. Okay. This is Dr. Sally Shaywitz, Overcoming Dyslexia, 2nd edition from Yale. This is dyslexia. Do you see how the back part of my brain has next to no neural activity and yours is going crazy? Now, do you see how the front part of my brain is about 2.5 times overactive? Okay. That's how we overcome dyslexia. I use the front part of the brain. So according to Yale, the front part deals with articulation followed by word analysis. Why was that initial state-funded program so successful? Because when I spoke when I looked at it, it said I used the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment, analytical articulation, same thing. So that's why I was so successful. But when I presented this in New York City in 2006, they said, how will this work for normal kids and younger kids? I said, it won't. Well, make it work for them. So I went back, and what I decided is I had to flip articulation followed by word analysis to word analysis followed by articulation. So this is kind of a long way to answer your question, but you answered a very complicated question. Word analysis followed by articulation. What a lot of your listeners are running into, because if you ever, do you know that many dyslexic elementary school kids over the years at all, or not really?
I've known quite a few, yes.
Okay. Do you know how they were essentially writing a bunch of randomly placed misspelled words in elementary school? Okay, I'm going to show you how to fix that. So I want you to think of a dyslexic student that you knew well, knew what they liked and disliked, and change their name to protect their identity. What's the name of the student?
Let's go Wayne.
Wayne. Okay. What grade was Wayne in? What age was he? And what's his favorite thing to do in the
Florida, he was, I would say, about 13.
Okay. I'm looking for, do you have an elementary school kid? Like somebody's like 8, 9 years old?
Younger,
sometime.
I know one,
Yeah.
but not close. But I knew that one individual, but not.
Okay. What age, what grade, and what do you think their favorite thing was?
I would say probably somewhere around 6 to 8 years old, somewhere around there.
Okay, let's call 8. What's the make up a name for the student?
We'll go with the same name.
Okay, Wayne. Okay, and what is Wayne like? What's their favorite thing?
Kind of shy kid. You'd have to pull him out, have to bring him out, if you will. He was always in the background, afraid to get involved in anything. But once he felt comfortable, then he will be able to talk a little, but still very reserved. Russell was
right. But what do you
always.
think he really liked? Give me your best guess. Give me your best guess of what he really liked.
It's a good question. I haven't even thought about it.
Okay, I'm going to just call it basketball, just as an example. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have the parents ask Wayne the 10 things that he really, really liked and 10 things that he really, really doesn't like. All right. And the parent's going to type out those things. Now, please note that going forward, we're going to be typing on a laptop, not an iPhone, not an iPad, and we're certainly not handwriting. Okay. It's going to be typing on a laptop or a desktop. It has to be a real keyboard. So then the parent is going to type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? And then Wayne's going to copy that. It's okay. Copying default writing strategy, Professor James Collins strategy for struggling writers. Then we're going to replace hero with Wayne. Wayne plus sign, what are we talking about? Then we're going to go to that list of things he liked the best. And we're going to start off with the first thing he wrote down, basketball. And we're going to exchange what are we talking about for basketball? Wayne plus sign basketball. See how we got there? Now, I'm going to try to fool you. When I do this at major dyslexia conferences, I tell the teachers, you're about to have an epiphany on what dyslexia really is. I'm going to ask you the simplest questions you ever had in your life. And if you answer them exactly, this will work. If it doesn't, it won't. Do you think I'm going to be able to fool you?
Yeah.
Well, just remember, I'm going to ask you the simplest questions in your life and just try to answer them exactly. You're about to have an epiphany on what dyslexia really is. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So we have Wayne plus sign basketball. We need to swap out the plus sign for a word to make a proper 3-word sentence. Okay. So here's my question. Does Wayne like or dislike basketball?
Dislike.
No, remember I said we're going to go to the 10 favorite things he likes. The favorite thing he has in the world is basketball. We swap that out for what are we talking about? So we have Wayne plus sign basketball. Okay. Now we need to swap out the plus sign. Does Wayne like or dislike basketball?
Yeah, I was trying to confuse you a little,
No, I said I'm going to ask you the simplest questions in the world. So let's go through that. Does Wayne like or dislike basketball? What's the answer?
Like.
Okay, excellent. Now, put that word into the sentence, replace the plus sign. What's the 3-word sentence?
Wayne like basketball.
You know, you are one of the few people that ever got that correct. Okay, you beat teachers. Repeat what you just said so everybody can. I know this is confusing, but you'll have the epiphany in the moment. Go ahead and repeat what you just said. What's the
Wayne
three-word
likes
sentence?
basketball.
Okay. Now, here's what normally happens is educated people will automatically add the S and write out Wayne likes basketball. Here's the epiphany. Wayne doesn't know how to add the S.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't know how to add the S. So we have to figure out how to get him to add the S. You did exactly what Wayne would have done. All right. And you kind of spoiled my surprise because I was going to come back and say, did you see the error? And then you have the epiphany, but you did it exactly correct. You did. That is less than 5% of the times I do this, that people actually do it correctly. So congratulations. But now for you, you just know how to add the S. Okay. It's in his grade, they will be shown the rule. In this situation, you do this. And they may show him once, twice, 3 times, and they got it forever. For Wayne, you could show him 100 times, 1,000 times. He doesn't know how to add the S. So how do we do that? Well, if you're past K through 3, we learn to read. Fourth and above, we read to learn. If you don't pass the third grade reading and writing test in your state, then you're in a world of hurt. It's an academic emergency. If you do pass it, you're generally going to be okay. So if it's fourth grade and above, you're looking at a private school like the Windward School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where they will take in 98, they have a 98% success rate of taking the kids in, showing them what they need to do, send them back as prepared as possible, 98% success rate. After fourth grade, it's 4 to 5 years at $75,000 a year on average. Why? Because to show Wayne to add the S, they use a Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language approach that hasn't changed a lot since the 1950s. They use seeing, touching, hearing, all the senses they can to get him to learn how to do this. It's complicated as all heck. Here's how I'm going to show you how to do it really simply. What we're going to do is we're going to ask Wayne to read what he wrote out loud. Remember, we're using the overactive front part of the brain, and we're using word analysis. We're going to say, Wayne, read it out loud. Wayne like basketball. We ask, Wayne, does that sound generally correct? He's going to say no. I'm going to say fix it. Wayne likes basketball. We practice that with 10 likes and 10 dislikes until it's all spelled correctly, everything's done correctly. Okay? That's a
Mhm.
simple form of word analysis. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now we need to do articulation. Because remember, the front part of the brain is word analysis followed by articulation. So we're going to go because, and then we're going to give a reason. The reasons are a form of articulation. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, now give me a simple reason why an 8-year-old boy would like basketball.
Let me hear that question again. Before we
Give
do
me
that,
a
Wayne, Russell, before we do that, I want to ask you this. I've been having this. Um, when did you bring that information to the kids to show them the difference with the brain? Did you bring that out to them to make them aware of what they were doing different from others and stuff like that? Or you guys didn't
only
go
in
into
middle or
that?
high school, depending on the student, only in middle or high school if they're ready for the conversation. I tell it to the parents. It's very kid specific. I have taught this to a 9-year-old because he was ready for it, and I have not taught it to a 16-year-old because they weren't. It's very kid dependent. But let me finish explaining this because this is what your parents can use to help overcome their kids' issues tonight. Give me a simple reason on why why an 8-year-old boy would like basketball. Just something really simple.
Yeah, I lost you there. You're very quiet.
Okay, why would an 8-year-old boy like basketball?
Why would he like basketball? I
Yeah,
love basketball.
because for what reason?
Well, it
Yes.
could be he liked a particular athlete.
No, just give me a simple reason of why an 8-year-old boy would like basketball
Fun.
because it's fun. Wayne likes basketball because it's fun. Now, do you see how we have a whole bunch of misspelled words there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, here's how you fix that because the teachers, what they're doing is prehistoric. Remember, we're doing articulation. So we're doing word analysis like dislike, and we're using articulation after because, which is hitting the front part of the brain where he has 2.5 times the neural activity. So Wayne likes basketball because it's fun. We tell Wayne to drop a period. Then, because the period's dropped, if he has a major, and I mean major grammatical error or a spelling error, he has to retype the entire sentence. As he retypes, it's going to usually be between 3 and 13 times. He's going to keep saying, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And he makes it. And as he gets to around 10 to 13 times, he's concentrating so hard that you could see sweat coming down his forehead sometimes. That's how strong it is. That's where the magic happens, because he's going to keep making that mistake until he doesn't. All right. And then you move on to the next one. You keep doing that for the 10 likes, 10 dislikes. You keep doing that until, let's say, they make a spelling mistake on number 19, redo the whole thing again until it's perfect. Then do reason 1 and reason 2. Then reason 1, reason 2, and reason 3. For a 10-year-old, this could take 2 to 6 weeks. All right. For a kid who's 8, it could take the entire semester. But here's what happens. They're going from usually kindergarten, beginning part of first grade, reading and writing, to the end of second, beginning third grade level of writing. So you're doing this at home. You're getting a grade level and a half, 2 grade levels of improvement or more, and you're doing it at home. Here's a little secret. If the kids can read a word, if the kid can write a word, they can read it. If they can write it, they can read it. So reading doesn't improve at the same pace, but it falls a little bit behind. I generally don't teach reading until the very end because it just kind of auto corrects, which is what we're trying to do. So when I did that, what I found is it's word analysis followed by articulation, but I couldn't get the kids to do any work. So then I found out, going back to what I did in law school. I was in my area that it just so happened I really loved it. I was really good at it. So what I extracted from that, from other dyslexic, which is why they own the class day one in grad school, is because it's extremely specific. It's in what they call their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. So for kids like Wayne, I would get one book to bring them up to grade level typically. And I try to get something a year or two ahead of where they're supposed to be. So we might get it, Michael Jordan's biography. All right. And we would spend the entire time on getting him to be able to read that book. All right. We're not doing 5 books a year, 10 books a year like the school does. We're doing one book for an extended period of time, sometimes for a couple of years. So we focus on the kid's speciality, number one. Number two, during the time the kid is in their intervention period, you can't ask them a general to a specific question. So you can't ask a kid, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement? For a dyslexic, it's like us grabbing fog.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. So we have to ask them a specific to a general question. What personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? And with that, what that does is we look it up, there's an answer. That answer turns into a question, which we answer. We keep doing that. That forces the brain to organize itself using writing as a measurable output. So if you ask a dyslexic, here's a key moment. If you ask your dyslexic kid, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So we force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So parents ask, well, how do I find their speciality? It's a Saturday morning. They can go wherever they want, do whatever they want. That's their speciality. Then we teach them from the specific to the general, word analysis followed by articulation. How effective is this? I'm writing a book now called Literacy and Reading Dyslexia Turnaround. It's about Kimberly and her son, Reed. Kimberly was homeschooling her son, Reed. This was December 27th of 2024. Just paid $700 to have the state of Ohio test her kids. Reed was halfway through 5th grade reading and writing at the beginning 3rd grade level. If he was in public school in a special ed program, they would expect him to increase by 1.86 points for the rest of the school year. That didn't happen. He increased by 20 points, 11 times faster, not double, not triple, 11 times faster using this approach. Kimberly worked with him for 3 half-hour sessions a week. Most parents do 10 to 15 minutes a night. I worked with her for half hour a week. At the end of the school year, he was a little bit above grade level. This is why this is so important. If Reed, his friends came to him in the summer of 2025 and said, Reed, we want you in our public school to be with us socially. If he did that in January, he would have been placed in special ed. Nobody could help him. He'd be very frustrated, separated from his friends. He's now in sixth grade because his mother did what every parent dreams of, got him to grade level, and he's doing just fine. That's how powerful this is.
And I know you guys are listening to us. And again, as I said, family members, friends, and so forth that you know that are in need of what Russell has. We're going to provide all the links and everything so you guys can get that book because a lot of these kids are smart. They just need someone to be in their corner and to provide the tools that will help them to organize, as Russell's talking about, depending on other things, are is their thoughts, organize all the data that is going in there. And once they're capable of doing that, they're capable of making some tremendous amount of changes, as Russell gave us the examples of. I want to ask you this question, Russell, as to the parents. You gave us a perfect example of this particular family that did your work and followed you. Talk to us about some of those opportunities, the parent as well as the kids, as to the changes once they made those changes and their life beyond that. I'm sure you have data and some stories on that. And I want those
Yeah.
families that are listening to us can see for themselves by hearing Russell talk about it, about the progression of where many of these kids end up as they go through his program. Go ahead.
Well, I would say it really comes down to about two examples. I'm going to first tell you that this one, just to show you how powerful this can be, I never saw this before. I will never see this again. All right. But this is how powerful kids can be with this. Her name was Casey. She was 10 years old, turned 11 over the summer at the end of fifth grade, reading and writing at the second grade level. She had an extraordinarily strong interest in Theodore Roosevelt. And I said, okay. I assigned her this, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, all 900 pages, 10th grade to first year college level, depending on who you ask. This one won the Pulitzer. Why did I do that to this kid? Because that's the book. It's part of a trilogy on Theodore Roosevelt. You want to know about him? That's where you go. But Casey, being a stubborn dyslexic kid, said, I don't want to do writing first. I want to do reading first. And I said, well, I don't do that because, reading just improves as you write. She says, no, I don't want to do it that way. I said, okay, here's how you do it. So I modified my approach a little bit. And I said, there's no way you're doing this. And she got quiet. She said she would. I said, no way. What does this girl do? She goes up into her room, locks herself away for 2 to 3 hours a night, 6, 7 nights out of the week. I had to literally go to her principal and say, you wouldn't believe what this kid is doing. You need to stop sending home homework, which he did. All right. Because he knew there was a problem and this is working. And I'm like, okay. And how much of my time am I spending with Casey a week? Her parents could afford to hire me for an hour a month. So I'm working with her for 15 minutes a week. And she's calling up with an occasional question. I'm stuck here. What do I do? And I said, here's the answer. Like usually 60 seconds or 2 minutes tops. And she's off on her own. 6 months later, she's in a silent reading class in sixth grade. She's now 11. The kids come over to her desk. Like, what is this big, thick book you're reading? And she says, it's a book I'm using for my outside reading program. None of them could get past the first paragraph. With Casey, you could flip it to, I don't know, this page, pick that word, and she would tell you literally the dictionary definition, literally word for word. That's how I'm having her do this. School calls to her mom. What is going on? We thought your daughter had a severe reading problem. She's the best reader in class by grade levels. Her mom calls me. I said, what do you think she's been doing in her bedroom hours a night, all day during the summertime? She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, essentially on her own. I'm just providing some clarification once a week and answering the occasional question. A 10/11-year-old girl did this on her own. Well, after that, we worked together for another couple of years. I took her through, I used the craft of research. It's designed, it came out in 95 for PhD students who didn't know how to write their dissertations. Now it's down to super advanced high school kids. It's context, problem, solution. I dropped context to 9-year-olds. So I'm bringing Casey through that. She was ready for college at the end of eighth. All right. Her last paper that I worked with her on was the Victorian era ideas of dating, male chauvinist, the male chauvinist pigs. She did not like how Theodore Roosevelt treated Edith, and she lambasted him on that one. All right. Literally grad level work. All right. So Casey's now in college doing extraordinarily well. Second example has to do with, let's say we got the kids, they're reading a grade level and they go to college. And I can tell you now what's going to happen while those are in high school. They're not going to be employable. The head of Anthropic said half these kids at the college level jobs are gone in 5 years. All right. So here's how I proof that. What's going on in the job market now is these kids have to know AI really well, and they have to become senior in whatever they're hired to do in 6 months, max a year. Like somebody with 5, 10 years of experience, they have to have that in 6 to 12 months. Like that's just what it is now. And they have to know how to apply AI really well. And I'm not talking the $20 a month brand.
Yeah.
I'm talking the $200 a month pro brand. So I had a student last year, he contacted me. I haven't spoken to him in years. I took him through the craft of research in high school, practiced it in college. He says, I hate AI, but my boss loves it. And the first assignment was to see, can they add anything to the company? So I said, I taught you how to do context. Go to the AI, talk to it, type with it. I don't care, make it work. He came back a couple of days. Okay, I got it to work. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but it got it to work. I said, good, go do problem. He comes back a few days later. I hate this. I said, welcome to the adult world. All right. So then I said, go do solution. So he goes and writes a solution. It's a 5-page. He knocked it down to 5 paragraphs. Boss flips through, can't use this, comes to his. He's like, yeah, this is a problem we've had for years. We just never put this resources into solving it. He solved it. Okay. Within a week, he's training his peers on how to use AI, the really advanced stuff. He said, this is what I found worked. This is it was trial and error. Guess who probably got to keep his job and make a lot more money? Guess who probably lost it? So what I'm doing as I progress with Reed, just so you know, I did context with him. He's at grade level. He's doing fine. Now for problem, I'm showing him how to write at the senior year of high school level. Okay. He's jumping he's going to go blow past his classmates, and he's slowly working on that. That's problem. Then I'm going to show him how to do solution, where everything he writes is completely original. And for that one, I go into very advanced AI, the $200 a month one. Why? Because he has to know how to use it. So I want you to imagine he gets assigned Romeo and Juliet. He writes something original at the graduate level. Okay. That's where I leave him. So when he gets out there, he will be employable because then he has 4 years of college to practice. Otherwise, even if you're successful, even if you graduated from Windward in Upper East Side of Manhattan, you have a 50% chance in 5 years, according to the CEO of Anthropic, of being a very literate, unemployed person. And dyslexics were made for this. ChatGPT came out with its pro version for $200 a month last December. I bought it that day and I haven't looked back. It's been wonderful.
That's beautiful stuff to hear. Russell, I have a question. I want you to talk. I know we're on a time frame right here. I want you to talk to the parents, because these are the guys that are there. They've heard us talk. They're, you know how we are. Our parents are. It's a big chance. We are a little nervous. We heard your conversation. You have a mic, Russell, that is plugged into all of these parents that have children that have this shortcoming, if you will, with the brain and so forth, but they're learning, and your program is to help them with that. What are you going to say to those parents that you are plugged into and you can talk to each and every one of them? What is your...
Well, the first thing is, if your kid's in kindergarten, I would get this book. Okay. Contact the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creative Studies. If your kid's in kindergarten, this time of year, beginning of first grade, and talk to Yale and say, how do I get these kids tested for dyslexia in kindergarten or beginning part of third grade. How do we do that? It's inexpensive. The teacher can do it. It's very accurate. Once you find out who's dyslexic, this is not me. What you should do is that insists that the school start teaching the dyslexic kids based on all these programs that Yale has. Because if they did this stuff has been around for decades, okay? When the kid gets a test at the end of third grade, Yale, they follow Yale's recommendation, they are almost certainly going to pass it or be pretty darn close, okay? If you don't do that and your child is now fourth grade and above, your now option is, if you want to use traditional resources, is to send them to a school like Windward for 4 to 5 years at $75,000 a year. Okay? Federal judges will force this if you wish. They call the school districts not doing what I just recommended grossly negligent. New York State just wrote a document, the New York State Dyslexia Task Force, about this. We tried to implement it using traditional methods. We're the highest tax state in the country. Sorry, California, you can't beat us. We're the highest tax state in the country. We spend more per kid than anybody, and they found out we can't afford it. And the teachers rebelled because it was going to take so long to learn. All right? What I'm showing you, okay, if you're not going to do that, best thing to do is to go to my website, dyslexiaclasses.com. That's plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com with an S. And there's a button there that says download free guide. Click on it. It's the 3 reasons your child is having trouble in school due to dyslexia. Fill out a link in my calendar where you will be able to speak with me for half an hour. There's no charge. And I'll be able to show you what your kids, parents have the hardest part with this. What's their speciality? I can work with you and your child to find out what that speciality is, get their book, get their audio book. All right? And then the next step is we work with parents on a yearly basis that is affordable. Why am I having parents do the work? I'm just going to be blunt with you. The average cost of an Orton certified tutor is probably $100 to $325 an hour, depending on where you are. And that's for weeks, several sessions a week, forever. The kids in grad school, they're still there. Not because they're trying to just leech off a family. It's because this hasn't changed a tremendous amount since the 1950s. And it's just not as effective as you would think it should be. All right. I have the parents teach their kids because, number one, it's affordable. You can control it. And I understand how busy parents are. Most parents work with their kids 10 to 15 minutes a session. Now, Kimberly solved this in 6 months. Some parents go quicker. Some take longer. That's just one example. All right. So we walk you through this. And we have everything online. We're here every week to support you on a webinar. We get you through this. All right. And then you can experience what Kimberly did. Her son goes off to public school and he's just.
I love it. Guys, we're going to provide all of his information so you can get to him. I want you to get to him because there's help. And, get to his space, learn, and become victorious in this situation. Because, like I said, I dated a girl that she was and her son, and all of the stories that goes along with that. Russell, I want to thank you so much for coming, man, to Threads of Enlightenment. I thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom with us here. And thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, sir.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.